All right, as I mentioned earlier today, Joe Biden was sworn into office as America's 46th president. He's already put his executive pen to work, signing executive orders overturning those of President Trump. But according to reports, he has an extensive list of about 53 planned executive orders that will take several weeks to issue. Joining me now to get into the details is National Review columnist and newsletter editor at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, John Funn. John, welcome back to the program.
Pleasure, Tony. Thank you.
All right, so the new president has a to-do list that's quite extensive when it comes to executive orders. What's on tap? What has he already done today, and what's on tap for this week?
Oh, today we saw the Paris Accords. That's the climate change treaty that President Trump rescinded. We also saw a racial equity commission. And the 53 executive orders that you mentioned, Tony, are all in the next 10 days. Now, for comparison, in President Trump's first 10 days, he issued 6 executive orders 4 years ago.
Quite an aggressive agenda. As you said, we're dealing with immigration. What is he looking at in terms of immigration as it pertains to executive action?
Well, there'll be a halt to deportations. There will be a halt to removing people from the travel lists that are allowed into the country. And, of course, it goes even further. It's not immigration, but he's going to rescind the Mexico City policy that blocks the U.S. from giving federal funding to international groups that provide or promote abortion.
Yeah, that was fully expected. Every Democratic president has rescinded that. The Republicans put it back when they come into office. Also, mandating masks, apparently on his list of executive orders, that on federal properties, interstate transportation, you have to wear a mask.
Yeah, and, obviously that is within the purview of a presidential order. Biden was urged to go further than that by his left-wing supporters and have a federal mask mandate throughout the entire country. But even he drew the line there and said, I don't think a president in a federalist system can do that. So there is a little bit of the old Joe Biden that still peeks around the corner once in a while.
Now, he has plans, I think, for next week as he moves into the climate area. Is going to have a summit, I think, in April on climate change. But he also will sign an order calling for science and evidence-based decision-making across federal agencies. What does that entail? What's that focused on?
Well, if you strip away the wording, it's basically how can the federal government mandate carbon taxes and other measures which would I think, take away the energy independence that President Trump brought us. Basically, Biden doesn't want to burn any fossil fuels. He said that he wasn't going to do that during the campaign, and it's true. He probably will not say you can't use fossil fuels. You just won't be able to take them out of the ground.
This is going to cause an increase, I would think, because America has become energy independent and we've actually become an exporter of oil. This is going to cause a rise in gasoline cost, energy cost overall. But he's also, I think, pursuing a gasoline tax, is he not?
Well, we have an infrastructure bill that has to be paid for, or at least something has to be paid for. And I suspect you'll see charges, fees, assessments. You'll see everything placed as a burden on the American consumer, Tony, except for the word tax. He'll try to avoid that as much as possible.
John, I think if we begin to scale back our energy production, put additional taxes, or whatever you want to call them, on the consumption, that's going to stall any type of economic comeback from the effects of the coronavirus, would it not?
Well, as you know, the biggest problem we have in the economy right now is we're a tale of two countries. Half the country's in a form of economic lockdown, New York, Illinois, California. The other half of the country is doing pretty well. We are vaccinating people chaotically but slowly, and the economy would recover normally. But if you impose too many burdens on the recovery and you don't prod these Democratic governors like Pritzker in Illinois and Cuomo in New York and Newsom in California to open up their economy, yes, we're going to have a much slower recovery than we otherwise would have.
So, John Fund, let me ask you this. When we move to his legislative agenda, which is going to be more difficult for him, being that he has very little margins, very, very small margins in both the House and the Senate, the $1.9 trillion relief package, a lot of that is to bail out these cities and states that have refused to reopen their economies. I mean, how's that going to go over with the American people?
Well, basically, what Biden is telling the American people is, if you're from a state that voted for me, your leaders are going to be bailed out of their problems. And if you're from a state that didn't vote for me and did the right thing in opening up the economy and while practicing prudent public health measures to contain the virus, you're out of luck because you're going to be handed the bill.
That's certainly what it looks like. So much for the unity that he was talking about. Going further in his legislative agenda, by the way, do you think he has the votes as long as the filibuster rule remains in place in the Senate? Will he get 60 votes to pass a $1.9 trillion relief package?
Oh, I think it'll be less than that, but in the end, there's going to be enormous pressure. Remember that, sadly, it was President Trump who decided to go around his fellow Republican senators and say, well, you pass $600 checks for every American, I want $2,000. So Biden can simply reference the Trump administration's proposal while he tries to corral some Republican votes. So it won't be as big as $1.9 trillion, but it'll be a humdinger.
Yeah, and whatever it is, we can't afford it when you look at the current debt that we're managing. When you look further down the road on legislative action, also immigration reform, I mean, that's long been a sticky issue. Will he succeed in getting an immigration bill through the United States Senate?
Well, just remember, there was a Republican-backed bill by some moderates like John McCain in 2013 that was halted in its tracks by an incredible talk radio and grassroots revolt that you were part of, Tony, and Family Research Council was. The problem is, will the Republican leadership in the Senate take that bill as a starting point in their negotiations with Biden? His bill goes way beyond what that 2013 citizenship amnesty bill would have meant. So the question is, where's the starting point for the Republican Party in negotiating with Biden? Some kind of immigration bill is going to pass. Now, events can also overtake us. There's a caravan of 9,000 people moving up from Guatemala to the U.S. border because they've heard there's a new president of the United States and, you know, it's the land of milk and honey, and they're going to cross over. So if Biden isn't careful, his best laid plans for immigration reform will run into the reality of people trying to cross the border, and that can change public opinion overnight.
Right, and this bill reportedly is calling for those 11 million illegal aliens that are in the United States to be put on a pathway of citizenship. So, you know, it might be why Joe Biden was telling, and those around him telling those coming in that caravan, this is not the time. It would not factor well, I think, into their plans. What are some of the other legislative initiatives that you think Joe Biden is going to be pushing early in his administration?
Well, the biggest short-term danger is a bill called H.R. 1, House Resolution 1. It was the bill that Nancy Pelosi introduced first when she became Speaker. It was blocked in the Republican Senate. But now, of course, with Democrats having a 50-50 control, it'll come back. H.R. 1 is a complete rewriting of our election laws. It's a complete rewriting of our political free speech laws. It basically would nationalize our election laws, same-day voter registration, automatic voter registration. It would change our election laws, Tony, in ways that would make the irregularities of the 2020 election look like a Tea Party. And it would be designed on purpose by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to make sure Republicans don't win elections in the future.
It'd be very similar to what California did when they got the supermajority, changing the laws to make sure they kept that majority.
Absolutely. That's why it has to be stopped. The number one priority of all of us.
All right, John Fund, thanks so much for joining us. As always, great to talk with you, and I know you know a lot about elections. You've been covering election fraud for a long time.